เรากำลังจะเปิดซีซั่น2หรือเฟส2นะคะในเร็วๆนี้นะคะน่าจะเป็นช่วงเดือนกุมภาพันธ์นะคะซึ่งพอที่เราเปิดแล้วเนี่ยเราเปิดรับสมัครเนี่ยค่ะในกระบวนการทั้งหมดเนี่ยก็จะมีการมี intensive course นะคะทางด้าน design for CE นะคะแล้วก็ตัว solution ที่ได้รับการคัดเลือกเนี่ยก็จะได้รับได้รับคำปรึกษานะคะจากในการพัฒนาต้นแบบเนี่ยจากผู้เชี่ยวชาญนะคะแล้วก็จะมีนักวิจัยพี่เลี้ยงเนี่ยคอยประกบนะคะนอกจากนี้ก็คือจะเราจะมีในเรื่องของการประเมินสอนในเรื่องของการประเมิน circularity indicator ด้วยนะคะแล้วก็สุดท้ายเราก็จะมีการนำเสนอนะคะในตัวของต้นแบบแล้วก็สิ่งที่เราสามารถที่จะส่งมอบนะคะในตอนสุดท้ายของโครงการนะคะถ้าทุกท่านนะคะมีในใจแล้วนะคะอาจจะเป็นท่านที่เล็งๆไว้ปีที่แล้วแต่ยังไม่มีเวลานะคะปีนี้เก็บข้อมูลเพิ่มขึ้นและก็เตรียมข้อมูลเหล่านี้นะคะข้อมูลที่เราสนใจก็น่าจะเป็นในเรื่องของทีมนะคะทีมเราต้องการทีมที่มีความพร้อมมีความมุ่งมั่นนะคะแล้วก็อาจจะต้องมีเวลานะคะในการที่จะพัฒนาตัวต้นแบบแล้วก็เรียนรู้คอร์สเวิร์กไปพร้อมๆกันนะคะโครงการเนี่ยไม่นานแต่ปีนี้เราจะให้เวลาเพิ่มขึ้นเพราะปีที่แล้วเนี่ยค่อนข้างสั้นไปหน่อยนะคะปีนี้จะได้เวลาถึง6 ถึง 8 เดือนเลยทีเดียวนะคะก็จะขอเชิญชวนทุกท่านแล้วก็ทุกท่านที่สมัครมานะคะเดี๋ยวเราจะส่งรายละเอียดไปให้ทางอีเมลอยู่แล้วก็จะได้รายละเอียดตรงนี้แล้วก็ในการที่เราจะประกาศรับสมัครแล้วก็เอกสารนะคะที่จะต้องกรอกที่เกี่ยวข้องนะคะสิ่งที่จะได้รับนะคะมันก็จะเป็นลักษณะของการพัฒนาต้นแบบซึ่งเราก็จะมีงบประมาณบางส่วนในการสนับสนุนนะคะในการพัฒนาต้นแบบ CE เหล่านั้นนะคะแล้วก็มีการสนับสนุนในเรื่องของการทดสอบนะคะการทำ feasibility study ด้วยนะคะแล้วก็ถ้าจำเป็นสามารถที่จะใช้งบประมาณในการทำตัวต้นแบบขึ้นมานะคะเป็นต้นแบบที่สามารถที่จะ demonstrate ได้นะคะก็ขอใช้ช่วงเวลาสั้นๆนะคะตอนเริ่มต้นนี้ในการที่จะเชิญชวนทุกท่านนะคะมีคำถามเข้ามาหรือว่ายังไม่แน่ใจว่าตัวเองมีความพร้อมไหมหรือต้องการที่จะพูดคุยนะคะก็สามารถที่จะส่งอีเมลมาได้ที่ de4ce@mtech.or.th นะคะซึ่งเดี๋ยวเราจะให้ในตอนหลังน่าจะเป็นหน้าถัดไปปะคะอ๋อหน้านี้ก็ไม่มีเนอะไม่เป็นไร หน้าสุดท้ายของวิดีโอเมื่อกี้นะคะก็เดี๋ยวซีซั่น2ก็น่าจะเริ่มเปิดในเดือนหน้านี้แล้วนะคะแต่ก็ก่อนที่จะไปตรงซีซั่น2นะคะวันนี้ก็เหมือนกับคล้ายๆกับพรีลิมของคอร์สที่จะเกิดขึ้นนะคะก็คือเราได้รับเกียรติจาก Professor Matthias นะคะลินดอลนะคะจากLinköping University นะคะจากประเทศสวีเดนนะคะอาจารย์ก็มาตัวเป็นๆเลยนะคะวันนี้ในการที่จะมาช่วยไกด์พวกเรานะคะในแนวทางแล้วก็หลักคิดของทาง Circular Economy นะคะหัวข้อวันนี้น้องอ๋องกลับไปหน้าหนึ่งได้ไหมคะค่ะหัวข้อวันนี้ก็คือ Circular Economy and Resource Efficient and Effective Solutions นะคะProfessor Matthias ก็ทำงานกับเรามายาวนานน่าจะ2 ปีกว่าเราทำงานกันช่วงโควิดเนาะยาวตั้งแต่ระหว่างโควิด between โควิดตอนนี้ก็เป็นครั้งแรกที่ได้ต้อนรับ Professor มาที่นี่นะคะจะขอสวิตช์เป็นภาษาอังกฤษนะคะก็ I would like to introduce our speakers Professor Matthias Lindau. He has a long established career and teaching in eco design in product service, right? And then also in the circular economy. And I think his most recent achievement was also you are appointed as the delegations to the Swedish government on the circular economy. He has so much experience and many things to teach us and to share with us for his lecture today. So please join me in welcome him, and I hope you will enjoy this 1 hour of lectures. And if you have questions, you can type into the chat box, or you can wait until the end. Or if you think that you will forget, you maybe raise your hand, and we will see if we can find time to ask you the answer. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very, very much. I'm really happy to be here. Now we'll see if my presentation will pop up. Is it coming? Oh, thank you very much. So I will have to take this off, otherwise it's itching my nose. Sorry. Yeah, I'm really, really happy to be here today. And it has been an honor to join the courses during the COVID. And what I will present today is linked to what I actually talked about in the courses. So it will be some repetition, but sometimes repetition is good. There is my... And yeah, here's my business card. So you have my information, and you're always very welcome to contact me. I will try to answer questions. Who am I? Yeah, it was a very nice introduction of me. I've been doing research in this area since, depending on how you count, 96, 97. So I've been around for a while, and when I started to do this, eco-design was quite something that was more like a marketing thing, not really serious. That evolved and later on to look into more business model, products, service systems. Around 99, 2000, it started to become popular. Actually, I was involved in that coining of product service system, the term, when I was still a PhD student, because doing eco-design, I realized that to design something is not enough. You also need to design and redesign the business models. I will come back to that more later today. And during my years, I've also now we call it circular economy, but I have also looked into the financially environmental implication of these type of new business models, but also legal aspects and also related to public procurement. So I will try to give you something that hopefully is a little bit new. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask them during the presentation. So the agenda is, can you hear me? Sometimes it's okay? Yeah. Oh, okay. Good. So the agenda is historic background. We'll talk a little bit about turning the pyramid around, how our language affects our way of thinking and acting, something a lot of people neglect and don't understand. The circular economy and its core principles. I've been heavily involved in the ISO work when it comes to the new standard for circular economy. And I will talk about the big research program I am responsible for in Sweden that is related to this, and show you some business cases and activities in Sweden. And of course, we'll have questions in the end, but also during the presentation. But before I continue, I would like to have a little bit of historic background. And the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence, it's to act with yesterday's logic. And I can see that quite a lot. We have this tendency to try always to make what we do have already a little bit more efficient. And that should never, ever be the starting point. The starting point should always be to think, what is effective? What is the right thing to do? And then we should try to make that as efficient as possible. And I can see this in companies now, in organizations, that they are still focusing on trying just to make what they already have a little bit more efficient. And that is problematic because we have a lot of challenges ahead. We have the climate crisis, we have depletions of resources. And why do we have that? We have it because we have the processes, the procedures, the solutions we have right now. We need to rethink. We should think, what should we have instead? What are the right things to do? But in order to do that, I think it's also good to have some historic background. Why are we in this position? Why have we ended up here? Historically, and this is also to give a positive approach. I'll come to that later on. Historically, when we produce things, we were living in a society with few resources. I mean, maybe not here in Thailand you had a little bit more access to resources, but still we have very, very few resources. The products we had to do and create ourselves. basically. And that was time consuming. So when we designed and produced products, we tried to make them durable, easy to repair, share, and recycle. That was the main focus. And all the things we had to do and ourselves, that also implied that we had problem to develop knowledge, how we can refine products and solutions. And this, at the same time, we always wanted to have a paradise. This is from the Bible, but it could have been any story about the paradise from any religion. What you can see here on this picture is what people aim for. A lot of resources, food. They wanted to have a secured society situation so they could have a safe life. Something they were always striving for, but it was hard to find and get. What we then had was the Industrial Revolution. And what we thought was a good society, a paradise, changed. If you would have been living in Manchester 1850, on the countryside outside Manchester 1850, or on the countryside, and I would have asked, this is a picture from Manchester, by the way, 1850. If I would have asked you, would you like to move to this nice place? You would have raised your hand very, very quickly. Now, if I ask you the same question, I think no one will raise a hand. And they have even manipulated this picture to make it look much nicer for people at this time. They've added extra chimneys, extra smoke, just to show how prosperous this place is, how good it is to be in this place, how good life you can have. All the smoke, all this activity shows a place where you can get a good living, where you can get money so you can raise your family and have a good life. So it was a big attraction to move to this city. And we got the Industrial Revolution. We started to mass produce things. But then we have a tendency to forget something that was the enabler for this to happen. And the enabler was actually the reinvention of the art of book printing. In the old days, you had to copy books by hand. It was very, very time consuming. And that also implied that very few could afford to buy books. And to share knowledge is a key in order to improve and develop our society. Because it's otherwise hard to develop and step up knowledge. When they started to do book printing, among the first thing they started to print was about how to make agriculture, the farming, more productive. That was a core thing. And they started to print and spread a lot of information. And during a very few years, the production doubled, tripled. And that enabled something for the society, that the countryside could actually ship in food to the cities. And less people was needed on the countryside to produce the food. And that enabled that we could start the Industrial Revolution. And of course, the art of book printing also enabled us to share new innovations, new knowledge, technical knowledge, etc. And what are we here to? I mean, we are here today. Now we're communicating with you over the internet, the ones online, are using this information tool here. You can see we are now able to share knowledge in the way we have never, ever been able to do before. So we have also the capacity to develop more effective knowledge than ever before. So this I would say positive. So we had this Industrial Revolution. We had new techniques that also enable us to transport materials in a way, resources in a way that we have never ever been able to do before. Before the steam engine, we normally had to have our production next to rivers so we can use the water as a power. Or we use kettles to take and help us to produce. Suddenly, we can also access mines, ores in mines. We can do things that we have never been able to do before. And that is boosting. We also start to transport longer distances. We can enable mass production because we take resources to one place, have mass production, and then we ship it out to different places. It was rational. When we start to have this type of factories, fast-growing cities. So we had a big shift from the countryside with quite stable social culture into fast-growing cities where you had quite poor living conditions. And we can see this happening around the world in the developing countries. So we have actually the same situation now as we had then. The problem is that we kept the idea of producing durable, easy to repair products that are easy to share and recycle. And we also had a big, quick development in society. And that is also a problem we do have in our lives. We have as humans, we are very bad in seeing changes. We think they just suddenly happened. This picture is from the Easter parade in New York. You can see one car, 13 years later, is only one horse left. We quite easily take things for granted. Now you're sitting with your computers in front of you. 20 years ago, we didn't have that. We had pen and paper, mobile telephone. We had jobs so easily, and sometimes we are not really reflecting, is this really needed? Or is it good? But the problem is, if you continue to develop products that are easy to repair, reuse, etc., and mass production, what do you get? You get secured markets. And that is what's happening. And politicians around in UK, US starts to be very, very concerned. Also the factory owners. Because what happens if you get a big layoff of staff from the factories in big cities that has been fast growing with not a social network stability as you had on the countryside? I mean, no money, no food. And even if you had a poor condition on the countryside, you could still get some food. So they start to be concerned about the mass riots, Jewish riots, and social disorder. And I can see the same thing around the world in fast developing countries. Politicians are afraid of the same. And so they're calling in experts how to deal with this. And one of the experts or claimed experts is Bernard London. He wrote his paper, Ending the Depression Through Planned Obsolescence, where his idea was that things should be less durable. It should be abandoned after a while. And there are several of those. But that is rational. I mean, you also need to remember, at this time, people were living in a society where suddenly it seemed to be endless of resources. New technology enabled to access resources that had been inaccessible just 10, 5, 1 year before. And they didn't see any problems, environmental problems yet. So it makes sense to make products less durable, just to keep the factories ongoing. People happy. And this is just an example of how factories and producers started to act. This is one of the most famous ones, is the lamps, bulbs. The Probius cartel. Because as they started and used to, the traditional was to make things durable, easy to repair. So of course, they developed the lamps to be more and more durable. So the average lifespan increased. And this caused problem for the manufacturers. This is Osram, one big producers' sales from 23 to 24. It dropped quite dramatically within 1 year, from almost 62 million to, I think it was around 30 million. Big drop. Frightening, especially if you are selling in the old way, selling products. So they met together in Zurich, Switzerland, and all the big producers and put together a cartel. Sorry. Where they came up with this scheme that they should try to lower the use phase, the length of the lamp, planned obsolescence. If someone was found to have a lamp that was too durable, they will have to pay a penalty fee. Or if it was not durable, it was not good as well. But as you can see, it was quite huge penalty fee. And they call this quality. So the quality should be right. And for you, the term quality, it represents something that is good, right? And we still think that is, yes. So the term affects us. We want to go for good quality. And they made us think 1,000 hours is good quality. So in average lifespan, as you can see, dropped quite fast. And at the same time, the sales increased. Everyone was happy. No. Actually, the authorities realized this, so they had to pay penalties. But still had learned as customer that a lamp should work for 1,000 hours. That is quality. And we have an idea of quality nowadays that is quite awkward. When you buy a vacuum cleaner, or let's take a computer. How long do you think it should work to have good quality? 3 years? 5? 3-5 years? We think that is good, right? A car? 10? More than 10 years? A washing machine? More than 10? If you look on the products, we can see that the average for a lot of products have gone down, the average life. Because we have learned that the computer normally, it's okay, good quality if it works for 3 to 5 years. But it would not be a problem to make it more durable. And the same with a lot of our products. And we think that it's good quality. There are also, of course, more famous persons that were telling and thinking about the same. Sorry. And one guy you most likely know about is Maynard Keynes. He wrote this book in 1936. And it's interesting to read the title of the book. A lot of people don't think about it, but the book's title is The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money. So the core thing here, the first thing was to keep up the employment rates. It was nothing else. And he stated, I should support at the same time all sorts of policies for increasing the propensity to consume. For it's unlikely that full employment can be maintained whatever we may do about investment with the existing propensity to consume. So we should be consumers. But it's one guy that is even more influential, I would say, but less known. This guy had a big impact on the American automotive industry, but also on the UK automotive industry. And automotive industry had a big impact on the rest of society, both in two ways. Both it actually developed a lot of new techniques, that was copied, production techniques that was copied. And it also, the car itself started to form our society. We started to have shopping malls outside, transport things in an increased manner, because more transport, more vehicles. So it was a symbiosis. And this guy is Victor Lebov. And he stated, follow me, our enormously productive economy demands that we make consumption our way of life, that we convert the buying on and the use of goods into rituals, that we seek our spiritual satisfaction, our ego satisfaction in consumption. We need things consumed, burned up, replaced, and discarded at an ever-accelerating rate. The American way, in short. And we have adopted that. And the society adopted this. A lot of the rules, the structures, etc., that we do have today has been developed during the last 100 years. And it has been formed in order to make this as efficient as possible. We have a lot of regulations about ownership, and so to actually make this easy. And society have also promoted this type of behavior historically. So we come back to Victor later on. So we have a lot of planned obsolescence. And we still think this is okay, this is quality. We have technical and functional obsolescence. We're trying to make everything in the product break down at the same time. Instead of thinking, how can we make it more durable? Or get a longer lifetime? We have technical design. We have the trousers. We are destroying them from the beginning. We have style obsolescence. We make things look dull after a while. If the car producers would start selling cars as a function, they will start to make cars that looks nice over time, don't change in fashion over time, etc. I've already been looking to that type of products with automotive industry. We'll come back to that later on. And legal. A lot of companies are pushing policymakers to change the law so you force the customer to change. And especially, sometimes not illegal, but the technical, the computers. Now EU is forcing that it should be one cable. That should be enough. USB. One of the worst on the market has been Apple, constantly coming up with new versions, forcing you to buy those for quite ridiculous price. And you have thought it's good, a new solution, even though a lot of those solutions has not been better. We are fooled. We have also got a society with more and more products. And here is from average household. This is from an official study done in Sweden, published in 1993. I don't have the figures for 2020, but what you can see over time, more and more products, but also more space for storing all the products. And I think this is the same here in Thailand. But we can see also it's a challenge. A lot of companies have realized in the bigger cities, it's too expensive, so people can't afford a lot of big flats, so they can't store that many products. So you need to find other ways of doing things. And the time for using the products has also not increased that much. So most products you do have at home are just stored there. I recommend you to go back home, check your bookshelves, wardrobes, etc., and try to count how many products you do have at home. And one pair of trousers is one product, one pair of socks is one product, one knife is one product. And if you go to the kitchen or the wardrobe, let's take the wardrobe. What do? When you came here today, did you took the clothes from the bottom of the pile? Most likely you took from the top. And you have a big pile of clothes. If you go to the kitchen, well, normally you take the plate from the top. So basically you're using the same product over and over again. So most are just stored. Then you can also start to think how much you pay for all the products you're not using, and also how much you pay for storing them. And to have a lot of products is also problems, especially when you need to move. So it's a challenge. And also a lot of companies have realized this idea of mass production, big volumes, is with traditional sales, it's not working any longer. Because they have told customers you should go for good products, they should be cheap, and they should be fast. But it's not possible to do this any longer. And this is a challenge. You can see that in the fashion industry. You can see that in electronics. A lot of companies are now struggling. We can't push this business model any longer. You can, I should maybe have put this slide on describing this about S-curves. S-curves are quite often used for technology development. But you can see the S-curve also for traditional sales of products. It's up on the top. You need to find another business model because you can't make more out of that business model. So we see that, and companies see this. This is a dead end. It's not working any longer. And also see that in society we have now this type of structure. Still reuse very, very little. Most is going for landfill or energy recovery. Very little is material recycling, remanufacturing, etc. Even though it used to be like this in society. The focus was to make durable products that were easy to repair, reuse, and share. Because that was more from a resource perspective sound. If you couldn't reuse it, you focus on remanufacturing or taking reuse the parts, etc. What you also should have in mind that is that in the old days, our materials in the products were less complex. Over the years, we have developed more and more complex materials, not necessarily to make them more durable, but to make the production easier, to optimize the production. And the problem with more and more complex materials is that if you want to take them back, material, it's harder and harder. And I will not have time to go into that, but I did a study now in Sweden, talking with the plastic industry. We checked from the producers to the end of life. And we asked them, would it be possible, because now you're using 10,000 plus different type of plastics, would it be possible to reduce the number to 10 or around that? And they stated, yes, it would be. And it would be even better, easier, because if we also want to recycle, reduce, then it's easy if you have fewer, because then we can sort them more easily. We then can get better specifications, bigger volumes of plastic, so it's easy for us to reuse it. And to handle a lot of different plastics in production, it's also quite time-consuming and costly. But so far, we have not considered this. But more and more companies start to reconsider. We have the same in metal. We're using a lot of different alloys. Alloys that are more or less impossible to recycle. And producers now start to realize if we can't continue like this, because it will cause us problem if the raw material starts to end. We need to rely on the resource stock we have in society. So we need to turn the pyramids back into this. Actually, I should have made this figure upside down, because this is a stable, how a pyramid looks when it's stable. So, I mean, I will actually swap this, because this should be the opposite around. And so this will be the green down here, because that is a stable pyramid. This is not stable. So if you want to something new, you also have to stop doing something old. We need to abandon bad ideas and go for better ideas. But then we also need to think and start changing things. And now I'll give you some examples. So some of you have already seen these examples. So it's repetition. But let's assume that you are in need of those nice spoons, forks, and knives. And I'm selling those, and the price is acceptable for you. Then most likely you could consider to buy them from me. But if I tell you that they are secondhand, what will happen? Your brain start to think, oh, secondhand, might buy them, but for a lower price, not for the full price, even though they are the same. Here's another example. Let's say I have those fluffy towels, and you are in need of fluffy towels, and the price is right for you, and then most likely you could consider to buy them. But if I tell you those are secondhand, what will happen? Are they really clean? Or even maybe they are, but not for the same price as the new one. And this is something we have been told. At the same time, I think most of you have had the experience of staying in a hotel. And I'm quite sure you have not gone down to reception telling them that you should have a discount due to the fact that they are using secondhand towels in your room, and the blankets are also secondhand towels. And the towels have been, they have been drying things that you don't want to think about. And in the restaurant, they're using knives and forks that someone else has been having. But there you accept it. So it's very, very much up here how we consider things, and also how we have been told. And in order to change behavior, we also need to consider how we are using our language. Because we as humans have a tendency to think about positive things. Then we are more creative. If we see and focus on problems, we have a tendency to be less interested and try to run safe. We are reusing old ideas. So instead of talking about environmental challenges, we should talk about environmental opportunities. Opportunities, if we can solve something, we can have something better. And we should also think about how we communicate. Now, as Victor Lebel wanted us, we are talking about that we should be consumers. We think about ourselves as consumers. We are telling our customers, you should be a consumer. We have put a very big focus on ownership and waste. Waste is a very misused term. We're using the term waste for a lot of things that I would say is not waste. It's a resource. And we're talking about secondhand products. This is quite ridiculous. Because I think some of you lives in a flat or in a house that someone else have been living in before. And you don't call it a secondhand flat or a house. You might own a car that is a secondhand, but you don't call it a secondhand car. You call it a car. Instead, we should focus on the function, the performance of things. We should talk about users, use, access. Access is an interesting thing, not to own it. We should talk about resources. Resources that could have different values over time. Could be positive or negative. We should talk about products. I mean, even if it has been used once, it's still a product. And so on. So, and this is important when we communicate, because it also affects our way of thinking, as I showed you in the examples. Because as soon as you call something waste, waste is something we have learned is boring. And then we start to care less about it, and we treat it less good. If we talk about this as a resource, that is interesting. A resource we can do something out of. And that goes also for customers. I mean, if the customer are told this product is based on waste, recycled waste, can I really be sure that this product has quality enough? But if you tell them this is we have used a resource, reused resource, it's more positive. So this is very, very important in our communication, and with that you also start to have a more of a life cycle perspective. Think about and talk about the total cost, because that is what matters in the end. And this is something that companies has not been so interested in telling or talking about. A lot of companies, they are actually earning a lot of money on the aftermarket. They see the products right now as a way, a mean for earning more money. For the automotive industry, it has been like that. For the printer industry, for sure. I mean, now many years ago, I was in Japan, a recycling company, and they had a big, it's hard to explain for you, a huge mountain of brand new printers that we were going to scrap because they had come out with a new model. And the new model was much more profitable when it comes to the aftermarket. So it was cheaper to scrap all those printers rather than put them on the market, because the printers were sold for a price just to get them out so they can sell their toner cartridges, etc. And this is also lifetime requirements. I will come back to the financial aspects about this as well, because this is also something that is interesting. Then I forgot to mention, I like Victor Lebov a lot. Sorry, Peter Drucker a lot. And all his quotes, I've been using those. The relevant question he stated once, it's not simply what shall we do tomorrow, but rather what shall we do today in order to get ready for tomorrow. And I can see here that some companies are really doing a lot right now. But I can also see a lot of companies that are waiting and see. And I see a big risk here, because waiting and see is also a way to take a decision. The problem is waiting and see can also imply that when they finally start and realize that they need to do something, it's too late. They don't have resources left. And I can see this is especially problematic for mass producing company, because they have longer way to go if they want to change the business model, because they also need to change the whole structure. This is a picture I developed together with my colleagues Erik Sundin and Thomas Akau some years ago. And it's in the first standard for circular economy, published by BSI back in 2017. And this is based on a lot of life cycle assessment and LCC analysis. What it actually tried to show is environmental impact, when you can influence it, and the cumulative environmental impact. And when showing this to company owners or top managers, they sometimes, oh, why have I not thought about this? Because what they have been focusing on, trying to optimize due to the old way of selling, is this part. Optimizing production, maybe 1% per year. And now they are on the top of the S-curve. It's hard to do more. And then at the same time, they are controlling the design. And it's in the early phase of design you can really affect future environmental impact, because it's here you decide, for example, what type of fuel you will use, etc. How durable the product will be. At the same time, for immense amount of products, it's during the use phase you have the main environmental impact. And they have seen, okay, if we start to have this extended life cycle perspective, it's quite easy for us to actually start to optimize this. New technologies, ICT technologies, also enable us to follow our products in a new and easier way than just a few years ago. And one way could be also to extend the lifetime. Some companies have claimed it would not be a problem to extend the lifetime with 200-300%. And the cost for doing that would be not necessarily more expensive, in several cases actually cheaper. Because to optimize to have a product that has a very specific life frame, like a vacuum cleaner. A vacuum cleaner nowadays is designed to run for around 700 hours, but to make it work 5 times longer, it's easier. But the problem is then you need to change the business model. Because we also realize we need to change the business model. We can't sell products, but we can, if we sell the function, then this is interesting for us. And this has been a starting point before even starting to look into this about circular economy. A lot of companies started to think, okay, this makes sense. We can use our resources in a smarter way. It's a way for jump from this S-curve of traditional sale into new S-curve. This actually goes back to around 2000. Now we have with circular economy, and it's in line with this. And I will start the presentation on the right side of this picture. What we have now is this type of linear economy. What we used to have is this more reuse economy. And the idea is now to move towards a circular economy. With that said, I think it's important, and I will show you in a few seconds, that this should not be seen as a goal. It's more like a vision. Because we will never, ever end up in a 100% circular economy. And it's not even good. What we should aim for is going as much as we can towards this direction, but we will never end up here 100%. So it should be seen as a vision. And what is then a circular economy? And I've been, as I mentioned, involved in the standardization work within ISO, and this is how we have defined it. It's not official, but it's defined as an economic system that uses a systemic approach to maintain a circular flow of resources by recovering, retaining, or adding to the value while contributing to sustainable development. And 2 important things here, actually maybe 3. Of course, it's an economic system. I mean, we will have a circular system, but it will not be we will always have some linear. It will not always be just circular. And it's a systemic approach, meaning that we need to have a more broader perspective. We can't just look on production. We need to have a view of how things are used over time, etc. We need to have a more focus on circular flow resources, and also important, the value. Because the reason why we have the environmental problems that we do have today is that we are using resources to produce value. We have needs, and those needs we are solving by producing products. And those products contain resources. But what is then important is that those products now provide us value, but we need to secure that when they don't provide us value any longer, we need to secure that we can take back those resources and use them for other products that can provide us value. And we need to secure that over time. And that, so we should also focus on prolonged use phase. That goes to this slide, the 6 interlinked circular economy principles. Because what we have also done in this work is trying to identify, and we have gone through a lot of literature, latest research, what are then the core things to enable this type of more circular society? And how should companies think and act? Then we have put together those 6 interlinked circular economy principles, and I want to stress they are interlinked. You can't just cherry pick. you need to see them and deal with all 6 in combination. And of course, you need to have this system thinking. You need to have a broad approach, just standing here right now. You need to understand also not only your operation, but also maybe your competitors, and also how things will develop over time. So you have an idea, plan, not only how the resources of product will be used first use, but also over time. So that requires more thinking. Also value creation. A good product is a product that is used not only for short term, but also over time, constantly. So you need to be better in providing value. If you're going to the way of selling product where you sell the function, you want the customer to utilize it a lot, because if it's not used, the customer will hand it back to you and you earn no more money. And it could also be, in order to create this type of system, you need to have new type of value sharing schemes. It might be that some actors will lose. For example, we can see that in the electrifications in the automotive industry. Until now, the manufacturers of car, they have been relying a lot on the dealers. The dealers have had workshops, and they have been earning quite a lot of money from service, etc. Because we have been told after 15,000 kilometers per year, you should have a service. And that is just an idea they came up with many years ago, because it was the average people actually were driving. So it was quite convenient to get the customer back once a year. But now when going for electrification and autonomous cars, the electric engines are much more durable. It will be hard to sell that type of service. That implies that the dealers will earn less money. But at the same time, the dealers are important for the sale. So even if they provide less value, you still need to share some value with them, because if you lose them, you will lose the whole business. And that is a challenge. You also need to have more focus on resource availability. Availability for present and future generations. It could be not only for generations, human generations, but also generations of products. So you need to have a broader perspective. And going in that direction implies that you might want to have less complicated materials, less number of different types. You also need to trace, so you actually get the stock back and resources back. And that implies that you need to maybe have new standards, industry standards, so you can share materials. And of course, you need to secure that the ecosystem is resilient. Without the ecosystem, everything else doesn't matter. Now, what can this imply? Oh, sorry, I forgot this one. I told you I will explain why 100% is not good. This is an example of a tire. Let's assume we have 100% new tire production. Then we'll be here. Then we set up a scheme for recycling tires to refurbish them until we get to 100% recycling of tires. The problem is that in order to do this, we need to have this scheme, this system for recycling, refurbishing. And that system requires resources. And in order to get more and more towards the right, we'll also require more and more resources to that system. Because if you have a tire, if we want to have 100%, it implies that we need to walk around along the roads and pick up all the atoms. Very, very costly. So it will move towards infinity. So what we can find here is this is optimal. And exactly where it is depends on the system. So what we should do, and what we can do, is by design, make the tires more durable. We can sync different systems so we coordinate them. So there are a lot of ways of moving here. And this is, from a financial, economic perspective, sound. Because what you always want to do is make more money out of less resources. More value from less resources. And a lot of people, industry people, have realized this, also in the finance industry. But you need to see, okay, how can we do this? And just an example, because that's why I use a tire example. A lot, I would say, a growing number of tire producers, they are moving now towards selling, especially for trucks, tire as a service. They pay per kilometer. And suddenly they are picking up old recipes of rubber from the shelves. Recipes that earlier was abandoned because they were not good. The reason why they were not good was the fact that they were too durable. The tires were too durable, so what they wanted was a tire that worked for 3 years. Here they had tires that could work for 6, 7, 8 years. Suddenly those are interesting, because what you want to do if you sell a tire as a service, you want the tire to work as long as possible, because if the tire is not working, the truck is standing still, it's a cost, a cost for you, but also for the truck owner, something that increases willingness from the truck owner to pay for. So there are a lot of rationale. And from a financial perspective, you also cut the risk, because if you have a tire exploding, it's a potential accident. I will give an example. This is from Toyota, material handling, how things are changing. Toyota is producing forklift trucks, and they have set up this scheme of remanufacturing. When I started to work with them, 2003, the long-term rental contracts were 3 to 5 years. Earlier, they tried to sell as many forklift trucks as possible. Now they moved towards selling as few as possible. So they are visiting the customers, analyzing what is really the need, and then they try to provide this need with as few trucks as possible. And when the customer doesn't need the forklift trucks any longer, I mean, they're never selling the forklift trucks. They keep the ownership of the forklift trucks or the control. They're taking them back, and they're manufacturing them in this type of factories, and then they are sending them out on short-term rental. As I mentioned, when I started, the normal rental was 3 to 5 years. Now there are 5, even 12, and added on that several years of short-term rental. The cost for the forklift truck is still the same. As you can imagine, it's more profitable. The customer is also happy about this. This is a study we did. This is based on the real data, because I was assigned together with my colleague Tomiko Sakao to make calculations, help them improve the business. And we can't reveal the exact data, but we have it in percentage, and that is exact. This is for standard forklift truck put into this scheme. And from the customer perspective, the cost of rental long-term is 87% compared to owning it yourself. And if you're good in math and so on, if you have a set market, just people with finance background will start, but then wait. Here suddenly, but then we start to earn less money because the turnover will decrease. I can tell you, but I'm not allowed to show you, that Toyota is earning much more on this than on the traditional. And the good thing is that the turnover will decrease, because the important thing is not the turnover, it's the profit in the end. And the reason why, because turnover is just a risk. The thing is here, they can optimize, they can get more out of the same units, but over time, and that is profit. And they also get closer relations to the customers. They better know if the customer is not happy. They can also help the customer improve their operation. So what happens if the supplier takes a full responsibility? Traditional service and spare parts are virtual for the profit. However, if the supplier takes all, spare parts and service becomes a cost. So that is something Toyota want to opt out. Normally quite easy, actually. The reason why they have some need for spare parts is just it was good from the production side to make things weaker. If the offer doesn't work because of malfunction, the supplier loses money. But the important focus here is that, the thing is that focus is shifted from selling new products to satisfying the customer and utilizing the offer as long as it's economically viable. So it's a big changes. And from, I would say from a investor's perspective, what you want to have is a company with a stable business. Because the problem when you have just sales of products, if you move into a recession, most likely your customers will buy less forklift trucks. But even in recession, they will still have a need for forklift trucks. And if they have this type of scheme, they will continue to use the forklift trucks in the same way. So you get a more stable market, a stable income flow, and it's more predictable income flow. So there are a lot of driving forces for circular business models. And I would just stress that a lot of those are not just because of environmental related issues. I would say the first of all is increased profitability. And some companies are focusing on this right now, but they have been doing it for quite a while, and they are very reluctant to tell the customers that they have saved a lot of money internally, because then the customer will come and ask for a lower price. Demographic changes increase competition. It's a good way to get customer closer. Also to learn more about the customers. It becomes more like a relation. And to get new customers, marketing is very expensive. It's better to do more with what you already have. New technology also enables this. Small, cheap transactions, also following products is easier. We have real raw material costs, etc. So there are a lot of reasons. Now I will step into just describing a program that I've been running. It's an 8-year program. We are now in the last year. It's a 4+4. It's, I would say, the biggest in this area in the Nordic countries. It's Mr. Rees, resource efficient and effective solutions based on circular economy. And in total, it's, sorry, I need to use my glasses. Yeah, it's a 17 million euro project around. And we're doing together with 3 universities. When we started, or actually I started to craft this project 10 years ago, this was not a big issue. And MacArthur Foundation had not even released the report when I started. They released it just after. But I thought, okay, we need to get something more focused on resource efficient. To think about what is the right thing to do, and then make that what is effective, and then make it efficient. And we need to have both the focus on business models, how to design, and policies. I'll come to that. So we put together this program. An idea of the vision was the advanced Swedish manufacturing industry's transition towards a circular and sustainable economy, and to enhance its capability to develop world-leading, resource-efficient and effective solutions based on circular economy thinking throughout close collaboration, knowledge co-production, and mutual learning between industry and academia. And when we started this, very, very few out in the industry were considering this still in Sweden. I can say during the last 3-4 years, it has been an explosion in interest. Real explosion. Because now a lot of people, both top management, but also financial sector started to realize this is big business. This is money. What this is about is to make things more resource efficient, get more value with less resources, less risk. And we are very, very humble, but also proud that the Swedish Association of Swedish Engineering Industries, that normally never, I would say they never ever go into research project, decided to become a partner of this in the second phase. And what have we done, and what are we focused on? The thing is that since this project is quite big, we enable us to see and combine things. Historically, we had a lot of projects just looking at product and service design, or on business models, or on policies. But we thought you can't see them as separate areas, because the new technologies enables new business models. But those new business models requires different type of new policies. And this also requires new type of policies, and vis-a-vis. So we need to see and understand the interrelations in order to develop good solutions. So we also decided to have this bottom-up and case study focus approach. And where we have tried to gain deeper understanding of the practical applications and resource efficient, effective business models, and also our policies effect. And this has been very, very useful. So we look into companies, okay, what would be useful policies? And I think this is important because we have a tendency to either look on the macro level or the micro level. But you need to look from both sides. Then, depending on the focus, the goals will be different. We have also had a quite strong network of companies. So I think you might recognize some of them. Besides those companies, we have also had and have other companies that are so-called hang-arounds. And that has been a challenge, especially during the last 4 years. We have a big pressure constantly on us. Oh, we would also like to join. But even if the budget is quite big, we can't do everything. And here's just a strong research team, just showing the different focuses. So, I need to speed up a little bit, I realized. I'm talking too much. Doing the right thing is more important than doing the thing right. Peter also mentioned. What we are trying to do, based on the search, not only within Mr. Rees, but also other research projects, is to disseminate knowledge. For example, via the ISO work. But we have also been heavily consulted by different policymakers, different industry associations, and so on. And when the Swedish Confederation of Swedish Enterprises now developed a new standard or policy document, they consulted us because their member companies told, you should talk with Mr. Rees. You should talk with those researchers. They are investigating us. They have a broader understanding than we have as individual companies. So what we think, and also the Federation think, is it's important for successful transition towards a circular economy, etc., that it's profitable and competitive. It should not be pampered. And it's doable, because what it's about is to do things more effective and efficient. And its focus needs to be on improving and creating favorable market conditions. That implies that you need maybe to change some legal regulations, because a lot of regulation is actually through ownership, through that you should have traditional sale. We also, you can find this document on internet. This was from a presentation of their policy document on how to create good market conditions for the growth of the circular economy, where we help them list what should they focus on. And of course, waste, those are things, but adapt legalization, application, and enable management of chemical substances in circular flows, ensure effective financial instrument to facilitate circularity, invest in research, etc. So this is based on our research. And I think that is good. We should develop policies based on research, not just on thinking. You think something. And we're also very humble that we are consulted. And there are a lot of obstacles towards circular economy. And there are culture. I mean, we have certain behaviors, how we do things, and how we've always been doing things. We have technological, we have market and regulatory. And this comes to something I'm looking more into. I'm starting up a project actually next month, about system inertia. Because this is something that quite often is neglected. I mean, companies, they can do a lot. They normally want to develop the technologies, they can have the business models, but for a lot of cases, for example, electrification, they can't really change the regulatory framework or culture values and infrastructure, even though that is needed in order to make the business model successful, especially if you want to go towards more disruptive innovations. And this is a challenge that policymakers need to be more concerned about, because the policymakers can help here. And then you, as policymakers, need to understand what is needed. That's why it's good to have this bottom-up approach, not only top-down. Because otherwise, it's also a risk that you will develop top-down policies that will prevent things from happening. Because the devil lives in the details. And here's an example. This is one company we've been working with, Epiroc. They're a world-leading producer of drilling equipment for mines. And they are now selling, going for electrification and the battery as a service. So they're selling the equipment, but the battery is separate. And there's a fly, sorry. Here, I can't go into detail. They had developed all the technology of the batteries and so on, but what they had a big problem with in the end was the legal system. That was problematic. So some colleagues of my lawyers, to help them develop this. But that was something they have forgotten about or neglected. They didn't see it. And that was actually a big challenge for them, not the technical. It's also important to understand what provides value. It's a risk that you think you have solved the problem and then you get paid for it. And this is a company that has produced a very a novel technique for cleaning water to make it very pure. So actually you can take away oil and tar. I don't have time to explain how it works, but they are utilizing it for example, cleaning PCB cards. And Orbit One, they had problem with the PCB cleaning process because the chemicals they used were either too sharp or too weak. So they had to have several guys checking all the PCB cards afterwards. And that was very costly. What we did together with them, we changed to this water. And the company was really happy. This is a LCA of the cleaning process. Most of the electricity needed is here from the drying process. We didn't change that. But from the company perspective, they were so happy. Because suddenly they had no PCB cards that were not clean enough. So you can take away all the guys checking the PCB cards. So here, if you broaden that perspective, and I think that is my message here, you should extend your system perspective. Here you have the value, not in the cleaning process. And that I think is important. You should always, if you have solved something, you need to step out and also what is the broader implications. Because it could have been worse also. In this case, it was much better. And I can show you just this. This is from the cleaning process, the cost saving. I'm not allowed to show you the cost saving from the overall, but I can tell you it was substantial. And as a provider of this solution, the clean water, you should not get paid for this. You should get paid for the broader, because that is real the value creation. And that is also part of this circular thing. It's also important to understand who are the actors you should focus on. And here we have seen several cases. If you have traditional sales or things, you only focus on your customer. In this case, it's a company, you can find them on the internet. They are producing grinding equipment for concrete floor, making very smooth, very durable floors. And when they talk with the contractors that did the work for the property owners, the contractors were only focusing on getting cheap equipment and cheaper tools. At the same time, who is gaining the value? It's not the contractors, it's the ones owning, using the floor. So what the company started to do was ignoring the contractors. Instead, they checked with the cleaning services, because it's easy to clean this floor. Business owners, architects, property owners, what are your requirements? How can this provide value for you? So you can know more. So they actually got a pull instead of a push for their floor. And I think this is important that you do, to understand, if you remember, the value and value sharing. This is lighting. This is a company we've been working with that produce, based on old monitor screens, lighting. I will skip this because of the time, I realize, but this is a very, very interesting company that is using a reused product and put it into a new context. And they have been selling to schools, etc. You can see this lamps here. So you can dim it. And it's very, very interesting because they sell it as a function. So they don't sell the lamps. They sell it as a service. And it has now been procured for the second time by a big municipality. Very, very unique. Then you can also see your source as resource for future products. This is a company that we have been working with a lot. And this company started even before it was plastic recycling in Sweden. So they had to, from the beginning, they set up their own plastic collection. Now we do have plastic recycling. The idea was actually they had problems in the landfills with plastic. Produce gas clocks. Caused a lot of explosions of fires. So they want to get out the plastic from the landfills. And the idea was then to produce a material that itself was recyclable. And that is what I've been doing. And now they have a system in place for many, many years. I would say this company was a little bit too early. So it has been a problem for them to be profitable, but that is because of timing, I would say. So I will jump a little bit. So the material itself, once I produce it, can be recycled many, many times. They're taking that into advantage when it comes to core plugs for paper milk. And so in the old days, they used non-recyclable, the paper milk companies, non-recyclable plugs, and then the customer had to throw them away. Together with the paper mill company, they put together a machine where they are producing core plugs and taking them back, recycling them. They've also changed the design. So this was original design. And if you have this sharp, of course, you get cracks. So they asked the paper mill company, can we redesign? So they made this. This is 30%, can take 35% more load, and the weight is 30% less than this one. And by doing this, they can compare to virgin plastic plugs that can be used once. Now they are actually taking back and recycling them. And this is the cost, both the LCCA and LCC. So from the paper mill company perspective, this is much better. And also, of course, it's more durable, so you can recycle it more times, but it's also less plastic that you need to put into injection molding machine. That is good. You can also use it. After using it as core plug, you can produce fences and so on. So, sorry, been talking too much. Questions? Thank you.
See, we have several questions from the WebEx. I think first question is from Pon from HMC that he's engineer from the polypropylene products company, and he'd like to know is what could be the circular economy indicators for polymer producer.
What could be the indicators? A very good question, and actually, it's. I think the problem with the plastic industry is that they're using a lot of additives, and sometimes without thinking, are they really needed? And I'm not sure if it's a good indicator, but I think we should be more concerned about how many different types we do have, and also what we found in this survey. It's actually it's soon possible to get. I read this report in English because we have translated it. But I think what is important is maybe to get the industry standard where you try to identify fewer versions, alternatives that could be used for broader selection of products and alternatives. I think that is what you should focus on, because
you mean like also thinking of you decided the material so that you also have in mind of the when it becomes the secondary
yes properties over time
material,
then
that it can still not only be the recycle, but it can become the new material again and again.
Yes, so the properties, so you are getting materials that have properties, so it's easy to distinguish and get the spec for the quality spec, second, third, fourth loops, without needing to add too much new material, virgin material.
Okay, and now the question is also that this is from the Valio, I think the company is. Their suppliers produce aluminum die casting part. And that part can only use the virgin raw material in order to maintain its performance. It still be made more circular and resource efficient, or how can it be designed for longevity or repairability only, or what are other alternatives? Aluminum die casting part.
I'm not an expert in this, but I think when it comes to aluminum and metals, I think the problem is that there are several problems. Sometimes it's regulations that requires that it should be virgin when it's actually not needed. But the problem is, the reason why it's sometimes need to be virgin is because you need to secure that you can guarantee the quality and performance. And sometimes it's also that you are using too many different alloys, because aluminium is not just one thing. So I think I really can't really answer, but I see a lot of problems, and I do see that in near time we need to reconsidering the packaging and what type of packaging and how we are mixing materials in packaging, because sometimes this goes back to making things more efficient. In order to cut and utilize less material, we have started to have different types of layers, but the result is a material that is impossible to recycle. Instead, it may be better to have another business model where you actually go for packaging that can be reduced, and then can have even more material in it, but it can be used several cycles. So it depends on the context.
Do we have any questions in the yes? The microphones in, yes.
About the extended life cycle,
Yes.
the one on BSI.
Yes.
I think like I kind of understand roughly how it works, but can you please give like an ideal sample of like how it should be done? You know, when you like yes, what is the ideal sample that could be done?
This one?
Yes.
An ideal would be that in a lot of cases, the ideal, so not ideal, but what this tries to show is what you can affect and when you can affect something, and also influence. And for a lot of products, you have your main impact here, but you control it over here. So what you should try to do, and maybe I was not clear, I realize now when I explain this, that is, of course, that you should try to lower the total environmental impact. But you should also see it as a function in relation to the value created, because it's during this phase you produce value. So one way to lower the environmental impact is, for example, in relation to value creation, is to make this twice as long. Then the cost will be half or 3 times as long. But it's also the thing is that if you look on the total, it might then be better that you make let's say the product a little bit more durable, so increase the cost for manufacturing and also for design. You spend a little bit more time here for design. So maybe let's say we have a cost, a cumulative environmental impact here, but that enable us to really reduce the cost for in use phase. So the total will be lower. And that could also imply that you actually have extended life. But the thing also is that when looking at this, you also realize that then you need to change the business model, because otherwise you will not gain from this. Or it will be tricky to gain because the customers might be reluctant to pay more. Because the thing is also that when you buy, I'll give you an example. When you buy something, let's say you buy a car, then you're quite concerned about the engine, the color, the interior, etc. A lot of details, because you take over a big risk. You want to secure that you are, and you also want to have an understanding of what will be the cost for service and so on during use phase. And that is a risk taking. But if you rent a car, you're only interested mainly in the fee. And it's the same here. The problem with the car is that you are not an expert in car. The provider of the car is an expert. He easily, or she easily, the company easily know, if you don't need a car, here I have another owner. Or maybe you need a more advanced capacity of the car, then I can take that unit to that one that is not requiring so much high-level capacity and replace. So it's much easier to handle the risks. So the knowledge of handling risk here is also something that makes this profitable for companies moving in here, because they know, and they can also avoid the problem they have with the second-hand products. Because I told the customers that the second-hand product should be having a much lower cost. If they stop selling products, they will not have a second-hand market of the products. They can control and take out the units that they think should be taken out and replaced by better units in a smarter way. I hope that answered your question.
I think there is also the questions if the raw material to be CE, Actually, this one maybe the raw material to be CE must be recyclable concept only.
That the material must be recyclable?
Yeah.
Not necessarily. There could be solutions where it's more from a circular perspective better to incinerate it. But then if you incinerate it, it's important that you get the resources, the nutrients from the incineration back so you can produce new material. But you need to secure that it's sustainable. So incineration, to get utilize energy from the incineration, that could be better. For example, taking packaging. Every time you recycle paper fiber, it gets shorter and shorter. That implies that after a while, in order to make a durable packaging, you need to have quite thick walls. And at the point in time, you will suddenly have a package that is very heavy compared to the load you take. And also, it's easy breaking down. And then it could be better to incinerate or use the fiber for something else rather than recycling. So it doesn't necessarily need to be.
Yeah, because I think I remember one of the courses that we have on the plastic products. I think talking about the, for example, food packaging, then you have to balance between the packaging material made up and also the life extension of the food. Because sometimes you think that you change the raw materials to make it recyclable, but in the total, when you consider the whole life cycle perspective, that you actually wasting the food more.
Yeah. And there you have something else that is quite interesting. Today we are utilizing, of course, a lot of packaging to protect our food. You can start to consider sometimes if you buy something, how long time it takes before you actually utilize it. So sometimes we have packaging that can protect our food for 20, 30, 40, 50 days. But in reality, you're utilizing it within 1 or 2 days. So preserving it is not necessarily always needed. So we are sometimes over-preserving things when it's not really needed. And because we have a lot of packaging that can preserve a lot of food, we buy a lot of food that we have in our kitchens, and then we realize years later that, best before expired. So it's a little bit more complex.
Yeah, and it's also behavior as well, right?
And I think in Thailand you're eating going to restaurants, eating in restaurants. In Sweden we buy a lot of foods to our homes. So I think in our country we have more problems with this. In restaurants, I would say your way of eating and utilizing food is more efficient and effective than our, because it's easy for the restaurants to secure that they are not wasting a lot of food. But for you, it's harder. And for us as individuals, it's harder.
I think there's also, but if you look at the street food here in Thailand, we also put everything in the plastic bag with the rubber band.
Yeah. And I think that is a big problem. But it's a big problem as long as you're not recycling, because at the same time you're using transparent plastic, and that is a good plastic because it's quite easy to recycle if it's not additives in it, but the problem is then it needs to get back into the cycle. So I mean, a lot of products, they are recyclable, but they are never getting to the point so they can be recycled, and that is a problem as well. Yeah.
I have one question, sir. You have demonstrated some model of reuse.
Yes.
And I am thinking that for company to change to provide this, because it's also provided as a service.
Yeah.
Is there a tools or something for them to have to like the checklist before they change their model of business to like use?
Yeah, we have been working a lot with a model or method called System Actors Map, and the System Actors Map is a way to map how products and services and informations are flowing. It could be that we analyze an existing value creation thing, or it could be something that they want to set up. And the thing in this is that we are not considering the money flow. Money flow comes later on, but it's a very powerful tool to see where we create values for whom. And in a lot of those new type of circular business models, we can see that the willingness to pay can be coming from several different actors in the chain. And sometimes the ones influencing could be outside the value chain. So we have been working a lot with this.
I think that, listening to it may be quite difficult to understand, but
Yeah.
I think we will have the course that
we will use this.
tie in. So
Yeah. So we'll
that
use
may-
this.
Yeah, and I think we also realized this when we have done like 2 years of courses already, that okay, with maybe in the beginning we mainly putting principles and lectures, but I think this year will be a bit quite different. Will be add-on workshop and hands-on how to actually kind of use the tools that Matthias has developed, or you know that the company can also try to use it to be the stepping for you for the decision making processes, and to decide if you should go on which directions.
Yeah, I mean this active system maps we have been using now for 40 plus companies. In the coming weeks, I will do workshops with some big Swedish companies because they want to utilize this. So it's a very, very simple tool, but it's trying to think, okay, but what is the right thing to do, and then think how to do this efficient, to really understand who are the important actors and what are the requirements.
And I think in the past, because we have COVID, so it's very difficult to teach in the online only. So this time we will try to have this on site, and then we'll have also the group like work group together. And I think it's very looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I just come back a little bit on the here you asked about the extension of the lifetime.
Yes.
We are also thinking that maybe sometimes it's not like the extension of the lifetime, but not to do the over design as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like in the previous question about the virgin materials.
Yeah.
There's, I don't know, engineeringly, there is no specification for this is not a scientific specification. Virgin materials or second-hand materials. There's no scientific values on the properties of it. To specify it as a virgin materials.
Yeah.
It is I would say that it is a term of an over design. Right? Because if you want the materials with specification, with certain type of properties, then virgin or second hand, if it meets the specification,
it doesn't matter.
Same as the over design, in terms of over design itself. Too good of the materials, or too good of the products, too long of the service life, maybe bad for the circular economy as well. Maybe we have to address this even more.
Yes, so I think what we should focus on, what are the properties of material or resource, not if it's a second hand or virgin or so on. I just want to mention one more thing, because I realize in general you should prolong the use phase, but for some products it's better to reduce the use phase as well, because sometimes we have products that have very long use phases, but it's actually they are not used that long, so it makes no sense to have long use phases. So it could be the other way around.
What are the type of the products that should shorten the use phase?
Some packaging. Just an example. Maybe it doesn't need to have a package that can last for years. If you use it just for
Everything from A to B.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So sometimes we have, and it's a lot. Sometimes we have materials that are always specified, and I think this is a problem for engineers in design and manufacturing, because we have only had focus on these two, and engineers like new materials, and material providers they want to come up with new materials because that is what they sell, and so new things, and we have also learned that new things is better than old things, and that is not true. A lot of the new things are less investigated, we are less sure about. So I think what we should focus on more is what is good from the overall. I mean, going to medicine, just to take an example, my father is a medical doctor. There are a lot of new medicine coming out on the market that are new, and then people want the new medicine because they think because it's new, it's better, and it's not. It's just a new formula, and those medicines sometimes are less evaluated. You know less about the side effects. It's even so that some of the new ones have been withdrawn because they were actually not working, and they had a lot of side effects. And still people were, but we want to have the new medicine. And additional added on that, it was a type of a headache. It was also much more expensive instead of the old. So we have this, we think new. It's like mobile telephones. We think new mobile telephones are newer. I think you have seen this video on YouTube with Apple. They claim that it's a new Apple telephone. It's this old one. And the customers, oh, this seems to be much better than the old. Just because they are told it's a new one. So, yeah. Focus on the function and the cost, value.
Yes, I think I don't see any more questions so far, but with the recording of this seminar, we will put on the Facebook of the mTech and also
The PowerPoint.
Yeah, excuse me.
And the PowerPoint.
Yeah,
Yeah.
before and also on the smart circular Facebook as well. So actually, we would like to also thank Professor Matthias. It's been a long time,
and I would like to thank all of you for coming here today, and you on the site and you online. So please come back if you have further questions. Yeah. Really happy to be here. And first time in Thailand was 89. So I have a long relation with your country. Thank you very much.
Yeah.